Hello everyone, welcome to Achievers IAS classes. Let's begin our discussion on some of the most important issues of the month gone by. The first issue in news is regarding the dust storms which hit parts of Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh, killing over 100 people. Weather experts believe that the wind speed during the storm might have gone up to 100 kilometers per hour, thereby uprooting large number of trees, electric poles, as well as causing the collapse of several houses. There were primarily four reasons that led to the thunderstorm, mainly excessive heating, availability of moisture, instability in the atmosphere, and trigger for the storm. Further elaborating these reasons, the northern plains have been witnessing temperatures over 40 degrees Celsius, and there were two sources of moisture in the vicinity, and the cold winds from the western disturbance made the atmosphere further unstable. The trigger for the storm was provided by a cyclonic circulation over Haryana, thereby resulting in these deadly dust storms. With that, let's look into another related topic, which is regarding a two-day national workshop on the data requirements for the Disaster Risk Reduction Database. The workshop was organized by the National Disaster Management Authority in collaboration with UNICEF, UNDP, and the United Nations International Strategy for Disaster Reduction, that is the UNISDR. Developing this integrated database with locally obtained and validated data is crucial for tracking our risks and progress towards resilience, without which India will not be able to meet its developmental goals. And it is also vital for implementing the Prime Minister's 10-point agenda to address disaster risk as outlined during the Asian Ministerial Conference on Disaster Risk Reduction. Now let's look into some of the issues and schemes which were in news, starting with the Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme. It was in news because recently a parliamentary panel has recommended that the amounts donated by lawmakers for rehabilitation work after natural disasters should be dispersed within 2 weeks, which currently takes 6 months to 1 year due to red tape involved in the dispersal of funds. The Member of Parliament Local Area Development Scheme is a centrally sponsored plan scheme fully funded by the Government of India, under which funds are released in the form of grant in aids directly to the district authorities to take up developmental works related to national priority such as provision of drinking water, public health, education, etc. The funds released under the scheme are non-lapsable, and the members of parliament have a recommendatory role towards the choice of works to the concerned district authorities, who then examine the eligibility of works and select the implementing agencies. The district authorities then get the works executed through the line departments or the local self-governments or other government agencies. A point to remember from the prelims perspective is, while the Lok Sabha members can recommend works in their respective constituencies, the elected members of the Rajya Sabha can recommend works anywhere in the state from which they are elected, and the nominated members of the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha may select works for implementation anywhere across the country. The next important issue was the recently launched Govardhan scheme by the Union Minister for Drinking Water and Sanitation. The Govardhan scheme will focus on keeping the villages clean and increasing the income of rural households through generation of energy from cattle waste, which is in line with the objectives of the Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin, which comprises two main components, namely creating open defecation-free villages and managing waste in the villages. As part of the scheme, the ministry plans to set up 700 biogas units in different states of the country in the current year to impact village cleanliness and generate wealth and energy from cattle and organic waste. With that, let's move on to the next issue, which is regarding the Vandan Vikas Kendras. The Vandan Vikas Kendras have been launched to converge Jandan, Vandan and Govardhan schemes, and as per the plan, TriFed will facilitate establishment of this multi-purpose Vandhan Vikas Kendras, which are basically a cluster of 10 self-help groups, each consisting of 30 tribal minor forest produce gatherers. The Vandhan Vikas Kendras is aimed at mainstreaming the tribal community by promoting primary level value addition to the minor forest produce at the grassroots levels and thereby raise the share of tribals in the value chain of non-timber forest produce. To begin with, the initiative is proposed to be taken up in 39 districts with more than 50% of the tribal population and then to be gradually expanded to other tribal districts in India. As part of the scheme, the Vandan Vikas Kendras are proposed to be managed by a self-help group consisting of representatives of the participating groups. Apart from the aggregation of the produce and primary value addition, fully equipped training facilities and provisioning of working capital through tie-up with financial institutions, banks, etc. will also be provided to major minor forest produce items like tamarind, mahua flower, mahua seed, etc. There were several issues in the previous month with respect to citizenship. The first one, regarding the contradictions between the Citizenship Amendment Bill of 2016 and the National Register of Citizens being compiled in Assam. The Citizenship Amendment Bill of 2016 excludes individuals from 6 religious minorities from Muslim dominant countries of Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and Pakistan from being defined as illegal immigrants. The intent behind the bill was to clear a path to citizenship for these minorities persecuted in these 3 countries, but various parties and civil society groups have argued that the bill provides legitimacy to the Hindus who have migrated from Bangladesh post 1971. This is problematic because the National Register of Citizens does not distinguish migrants on the basis of religion and regards all immigrants post 1971 as illegal aliens who need to be deported. Further, the proposed bill is seen as discriminatory and problematic in limiting citizenship to non-Muslims, particularly in the case of Rohingya Muslims who are being denied refuge in India currently. Further, there is no distinction between people who shift voluntarily with that of refugees who are forced to leave their countries rather than out of choice. Therefore, the central government needs to apply much more thought before pushing the bill for its contradictions in Assam and prevent any negative fallout. The next issue in news was a petition filed in the Supreme Court challenging the validity of Article 35A and Article 370, which give special status to the state of Jammu and Kashmir. Article 35A of the Constitution empowers the state legislature of Jammu and Kashmir to decide who constitute the permanent residents of the state and grant them special rights and privileges in public sector jobs, acquisition of property within the state, scholarships, and other welfare programs. Further, this provision mandates that no act of the state legislature coming within the ambit of Article 35A can be challenged for violating the Indian Constitution or any other law of the land. In this regard, the petitioner said that Article 35A was in violation of the fundamental right to equality guaranteed under Article 14 because Article 35A was incorporated into the Indian Constitution by an order of the President under Article 370 without prior consultation with the Parliament, and Article 368 of the Indian Constitution mandates that only Parliament can amend the Constitution by introducing a new article. Therefore, the petitioner argues that Article 35A is against the very spirit of oneness of India as it creates a class within a class of Indian citizens, and the issue will be examined by the Supreme Court through a 5-judge constitution bench. The next important issue was regarding the efforts made by the Kerala government with the central government authorities to contain the threat of the possible outbreak of the Nipah virus infection. Nipah virus is a paramyxovirus that was first identified in Malaysia in 1998. The primary mode of transmission of the Nipah virus is the human consumption of bat contaminated fruits and subsequently from person to person transmission. The natural host of the virus are fruit bats, but pigs are considered as the intermediate hosts, and both animal to human and human to human transmission have been documented in the past. The virus is said to be highly contagious and has already resulted in several deaths in Kerala. The next important issue of the month was the announcement made by the American retail giant Walmart that it is going to acquire a 77% stake in the e-commerce firm Flipkart. In response to this announcement, several activists from the right-wing Swadeshi Jagran Manch staged a protest based on fears that Walmart is using the deal as a backdoor entry into India's brick and mortar retail market, and therefore it could squeeze out the traditional small businesses in the locality. Traders say they are more concerned about the predatory pricing and the steep discounts which these e-commerce firms offer with their deep pockets as well as foreign funding. Along with this, they highlight that while the Indian regulations do not allow foreign investment in multi-brand retail, overseas players have managed to find a way around to invest in the Indian market. Like for example, Amazon has registered its investment arm as a foreign portfolio investor with the Securities and Exchange Board of India, and so it can own up to 10% in any listed entity in India. But according to the deal, Walmart's investment is in Flipkart's online marketplace platform where foreign investment is allowed as per the government policy. In this regard, a price war is expected to play out between two of America's biggest companies, namely Walmart and Amazon. Although the shopping habits of Indians is slowly shifting towards the online markets, it still remains heavily dependent on the attractive discounts offered by these companies, which is not always profitable, as seen in Flipkart reporting an accumulated loss of 24,000 crores. But Walmart is betting on the future growth due to the competition it is facing from Amazon in the US market, where Amazon is moving from an online only presence to a brick and mortar plus e-commerce model. In this regard, Indian government should address the concerns of the local trade lobbies as well as the Swadeshi advocates to address the inefficiency of India's approach to retail FDI in a rapidly changing global marketplace. In this regard, the Indian government should assess how such deals will integrate Indian suppliers into the international markets and create a true level playing field for the local as well as the foreign players alike. Moving on to a protest of a different magnitude which was launched against the copper smelter plant Sterlite Copper in Thoothukudi district of Tamil Nadu, which has resulted in death of 12 people in police firing. The incident shows that the Tamil Nadu government failed to gauge the intensity of the protests because the Madras High Court had already predicted that the movement was likely to trigger a law and order situation. Given that the protests have come at a time when the plant is not operational and the Tamil Nadu Pollution Control Board has refused to renew its operations, there are questions being raised about the real intent of some of the protesters, possibly comprising of certain hardline groups. Further, the protesters have made chilling accusations that snipers were deployed by the police force to pick out certain protesters in a premeditated manner. In order to de-escalate the situation, an urgent process such as an all-party meeting is needed to infuse confidence into the community, and a credible environmental audit with credible experts on the polluter pays principle should be conducted because only such verifiable measures will build public confidence and make orderly industrialization viable. While those were some of the issues which were important from the domestic front, but there were several developments on the international front too, the most important being recently the US president announced that the US would be pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal and the process for the reimposition of sanctions would soon begin. In response to this, major world powers, particularly the European powers, which were part of the landmark deal, have reiterated their commitment to uphold the Iran nuclear deal. The US president's unilateral decision to pull the US out of the Iran nuclear deal is a huge setback to the multilateral diplomacy and the rules based international order because the nuclear deal was negotiated over a period of 18 months of negotiations by the five permanent members of the UN Security Council, Germany, and the EU. The moderate government of Iran went ahead with the deal despite strong opposition from the hardliners, under which most of the Iran's enriched uranium was shipped out of the country and the operational nuclear facilities were brought under international inspection. Also, numerous reports, including the ones from American intelligence agencies have said that Iran is 100% compliant with the terms of the agreement, thereby raising doubts about the US president's decision. This is because various experts have said that Mr. Trump's decision is not about nuclear weapons but is about addressing the concerns of its allies, namely Israel and Saudi Arabia, because it was these countries which feared that if Iran's economic profile rises, it will increase its regional presence, thereby posing a strategic threat to the interests of US, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. The US, by pulling out of the deal, has manufactured a crisis in the already troubled West Asian region, and it remains to be seen if Europe, Russia, and China remain committed to the nuclear deal under the growing pressure of US government. From the Indian perspective too, the decision of the US government will have wide-ranging impact on various sectors, namely oil prices, connectivity in the region, as well as the established world order. As we know, Iran is India's third biggest oil supplier, and the prices of oil have already touched a 4-year high. Any further increase in the prices will hit both the inflation level as well as the rupee, and therefore, any economic sanctions on Iran would further drive up the prices of oil. With respect to connectivity, India has plans to develop the Beheshti port in Chabahar to circumvent Pakistan and access landlocked Afghanistan. Also, the International North-South Transport Corridor, for which India is a founder member, would be negatively affected, thereby negatively affecting India's ambitions to connect to Central Asia and Russia. Further, there are fears of possible sanctions under the new US law for doing military trade with US adversaries like Russia, North Korea, and Iran, as per the CATSA law passed early this year. Given that India has long been a proponent of rules based order that depends on multilateral consensus on the international stage, the recent decisions of the US to walk out of the Iran nuclear deal, as well as other important commitments under the climate change agreement, India will have to consider a new understanding of its ties with the United States. If that was the negative fallout of the US government's decision to withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal, the next issue is regarding the violence which has erupted in Gaza Strip. The violence in Gaza preceded the opening of the American embassy in Jerusalem, which had previously declared that it recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital and would shift the US diplomatic mission currently in Tel Aviv to the disputed city of Jerusalem. When the US made this announcement, many had warned it would trigger violence in the Palestinian territories, further complicating any peace process, which is the case now, where Israeli soldiers have fired into a crowd, killing at least 60 people in Gaza. The disproportionate response of the Israeli military shows the utter disregard of both Israel and the international community have for Palestinian lives, with no meaningful effort to restart the peace process. The current move of the US government to move the embassy to Jerusalem has only worsened the crisis because Palestinians fear that Israel might manipulate the facts on the ground to its advantage. Therefore, the international community must not remain silent, and to begin with, it should launch an inquiry into the military action at the Gaza border. Apart from these issues, there were other issues like the Rohingya refugee crisis, the Korean peace process, etc., on which there has been no concrete outcome. Therefore, I'll cover these issues in the regular news analysis classes as and when any new development happens on these fronts. On that note, I'm wrapping up today's session. Do like, share, and comment to support this initiative. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day.